Hello, 6th grade scientists. This week, we are going to be studying plant defense mechanisms, plant characteristics, plant classification, and fungi. Here we go. Make sure that you're filling out the page that you were handed by your teacher the whole time during this video. Plant defense mechanisms. Structures for defense. They call them structures because they're part of a plant. Thorns that can defend the plant from being eaten by some animals are one structure for defense. These are thorns. You grab a hold of a rose and you feel a thorn and they hurt. They don't feel good. They can defend the plant from being eaten by some animals. There are thorns and jaggers on blackberries and other types of berries. So one structure for defense is thorns. The next structure for defense, fruits and leaves with poisons so that they are not eaten by animals. Well, we can tell that this boy right here, he's got a major case of poison ivy or poison oak, and it does not look like it feels good at all. I know that you've had that before, and if you haven't, you don't want it. So, two structures for defense so far are thorns that prevent a plant from being eaten by some animals, or fruits and leaves with poisons so that they are not eaten by animals. These are poisonous, and we all know that poison ivy or poison sumac or poison oak give you rashes that are terrible. And then the next one is the ability to close its leaves when touched. Thigmotropism. We remember thigmotropism. Remember thigmo, T-H-I-G-M-O. Thigmo means touch. T and H begin and end the word touch. So, the ability to close its leaves when touched is also a structure for defense. So far there have been thorns, fruit and leaves with poisons, and thigmotropism. Plant characteristics. Obtaining and using resources for energy. We learned this last week and we filled out a chart. We need to know that plants need food and oxygen and water, which provide required energy to perform the basic processes of life, such as growing and developing or repairing injured parts. Autotrophs, plants, remember, plants are the only autotroph. Auto meant self, troph meant feed. So autotroph, self-feed. Autotrophs provide their own food for energy through the process of photosynthesis. Photosynthesis makes food. Everyone knows that song. Heterotrophs must find an external source of food. Example, animals. Heterotroph starts with an H. Remember, hunter, gatherer, predator, prey. I'm going to food line to get my food today. Energy is released from food in most organisms through the process of respiration. So, plants eat food to get energy. So, energy is released. Remember the tropisms? Response to stimuli. All plants respond to stimuli. A stimulus is any change in the organism's surroundings that would cause the organism to react. Examples are changes in light, temperature, sound, amount of water, space, amount or types of food, or other organisms being present. The reaction to the stimulus is called a response. It could be a negative or a behavior performed by the organism. It could be an action or a behavior performed by the organism. The reaction to the stimulus is called the response. It could be an action or behavior performed by the organism. The ability to reproduce. This picture would look very familiar to you. We just did it last week. We talked about the 6 ways that a plant can go through asexual reproduction, or propagate or clone itself by tubers, roots, bulbs, runners, stem cuttings, and leaves. But there's only one way that it can go through sexual reproduction, and that's in a flower when the sperm and the egg unite in fertilization. Organisms have the ability to produce offspring that have similar characteristics as the parents. There are two types of reproduction. Asexual, involving only one parent and produces offspring that is identical to the parent, same thing as cloning. And sexual reproduction. Sexual reproduction involves two parents, the egg, the female reproductive cell, and sperm, male reproductive cell, from these two parents combine to make an offspring that is different from both parents. Growth and development. Growth is the process whereby the organism becomes larger. Development is the process that occurs in the life of the organism that results in the organism becoming more complex structurally. So growth is when it gets larger, when it grows bigger. But development is when it changes from one process to the next. It changes in its life cycle. Organisms require energy to grow and develop, and we know that plants have to make food in photosynthesis, to eat the food in respiration in order to get energy to grow and develop. Now, we're going to talk about something called the classification of organisms. How are organisms classified? The study of classifying organisms is known as taxonomy. Really weird word because it doesn't seem like it has anything to do with the subject. But a taxonomist is someone who studies taxonomy, or how organisms are classified. An organism is placed into a broad group like this. All of these animals in the kingdom Animalia. Kingdom Animalia, Animalia is the Latin word for animals. So the kingdom is all the animals in the animal kingdom. And then they go into more specific groups based on its structures. So we start out with the kingdom Animalia and all the animals in the animal kingdom, and then they break it down into something called the phylum. Phylum Chordata means the group of animals in the animal kingdom that have a spinal cord and a backbone. A backbone. So if you have a backbone in your back, then you're going to be in the phylum Chordata. And then they narrow it down even further into the class. This is the class Mammalia, which means all the mammals that have a backbone. And then it's even narrowed down further to the order Carnivora. So first it was all of the animals in the animal kingdom, narrowed down to the phylum that all have backbones, narrowed down to just the animals that were in the animal kingdom that have backbones that are mammals, and then it's narrowed down to all the animals in the animal kingdom who have backbones, who are mammals, who are carnivores. That means they eat meat. And then it's narrowed down to the family that is Ursidae. So the family is Ursidae, so it would be just the bears. And then it's narrowed down to genus Ursus, and that's the genus. And then the species is Ursus arctos. So it's the grizzly bear and the black bear. If you notice, the grizzly bear's all the way down to here. So he fits into all of those categories. The black bear fits into almost all of the categories. The giant panda fits into almost all of them and stops at family. The red fox fit into the beginning of the categories. The Albert squirrel just 3, the coral snake only 2, and the sea star only 1. So it was narrowed down to the species and we identified the species that could be in all of those areas as Ursus arctos. And if you notice, Ursus is capitalized, but Arctos is not. Now that is a Latin name. We call it the grizzly bear, but its Latin name is Ursus arctos. Ursus in the species is always capitalized first, and the genus is always capitalized, and the species is always lowercase. So the levels of classification from the broadest, that means has the most in it, to the most specific, down here, include kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, species. Kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, species. And it goes from the largest group to the smallest group. The least alike, see these are the least alike, to the most alike, down at the bottom. And this is how we memorize it. Kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, species. What? Kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, species. What? Kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, species. What? Kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, species. Kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, species. Kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, species. If you just keep saying that, it's going to drive you crazy till you memorize it all. The more classification levels an organism shares, the more characteristics they have in them. Now, the classification of organisms. Kingdom. While scientists currently disagree as to how many kingdoms there are, they mostly all support 5. Plant, animals, fungi, protists, and monarans. And Miss Leslie always says to think of, my pink friend prefers apples. My pink friend prefers apples. My pink friend prefers apples. Monarans, plants, monarans, plants, fungi, protists, animals. My pink friend prefers apples. He's so fuzzy, my little pink friend. All right, organisms are placed into kingdoms based on their ability to make food and the number of cells in their body. So, all the organisms are placed into kingdoms based on their ability to make food and how many cells they have in their body. Taxonomists are scientists who group organisms. The study of it is called taxonomy. So taxonomists are scientists who group organisms. Now, I told you the song, Kingdom, Phylum, Class, Order, Family, Genus, Species, what? Kingdom, Phylum, Class, Order, Family, Genus, Species, what? Kingdom, Phylum, Class, Order, Family, Genus, Species, what? Kingdom, Phylum, Class, Order, Family, Genus, Species. But I didn't tell you the other way you could memorize it. Just remember King Philip came over for great spaghetti. King Philip came over for great spaghetti. King Philip came over for great spaghetti. Kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, species. What? Kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, species. All right. Classification of organisms. The Monera is made up of the smallest and most primitive forms of life. So viruses and bacteria. And you'll be studying this in the 7th grade. You just need to know that the first group is called the Monarans, or Monera, which is plural. Then the Protistas, or the protist, made of organisms having nuclei and cell parts. This is something else that you'll study in the 7th grade. Amoebas, paramecium, algae. Now we look a little bit at algae, but most of it is studied in the next grade. So paramecia, those are a weird shape. What is that shape? Can anyone guess? What in the world is oblong? Paramecia are oblong. They're oval-shaped. They're egg-shaped. They're oblong-shaped. Oblong. Kind of like an egg. Kind of like an oval. Oblong. Paramecium are oblong. Many other things are oblong. Beans are oblong. Eggs, obviously, are oblong. Let's look at a little list of the kingdoms and the characteristics and examples. The Monera are one-celled, no nucleus or cell parts. They may use photosynthesis. Examples are bacteria, viruses, blue-green algae. The Protista, or the protist, are one-celled. They have a nucleus and cell parts. They're found in water. You do not need to memorize this list. You do not need to memorize this list. You just need to listen to the information. Examples of protist are amoeba, euglena, and paramecium. Fungi absorbs nutrients, one-celled or many-celled, and they reproduce by budding or spores. Examples of them are yeast, ringworm, and mushrooms. We do study the fungi kingdom, so this one would be kind of important in the 6th grade. And then plants. The plant kingdom converts sunlight to energy, absorbs carbon dioxide, releases oxygen in internal systems, move water and nutrients through. Mosses, ferns, conifers, grasses, and flowering plants are examples of the kingdom Plantae, which is the plant kingdom. This is Latin. The kingdom Animalia, which is Latin for animal kingdom, must ingest nutrients. Some have a backbone, sexual reproduction. They contain wide varieties of life forms. And examples of them are worms, fish, frogs, birds, snakes, and spiders. So the bottom 3 are very important to us in the 6th grade. And those are the ones that I want you to focus on. Fungi, the fungi, the plants, and the animals. Classification of organisms. Phylum. In the plant kingdom, phyla are sometimes referred to as divisions. Phyla is the plural. Phylum is the singular. It just really means divisions. Plants are normally divided into 2 groups, and we've studied these groups before: vascular and non-vascular. In the animal kingdom, there are 35 different phyla or divisions. These phyla can be divided into 2, either the vertebrates or the invertebrates, and we'll study that later this year. Classification of organisms for class, order, and family. Levels are more specific. They include fewer organisms. The genus, and the plural is genera, contains closely related organisms. The genus is used as the first word in an organism's scientific name. Species. All of the organisms of the same type, which are able to breed and produce young of the same kind, are the same species. The species is used as the second word in an organism's scientific name. So the genus is its first name, and the species is its second name, just like you have a first and last name. How do we look at these scientific names? The scientific name of an organism is made up of its genus and its species. It is written in italics. Its genus is capitalized and the species is lowercase, with the genus always capitalized, just like this. For example, Canis lupus is the scientific name for the wolf, and Pinus taedia is the scientific name for a loblolly pine tree. So Canis is capitalized, lupus is lowercase, genus is the Canis, species is lupus, and that is for the wolf. Pinus taeda, or taeda, is the genus is Pinus and the species is taeda, and that's for the loblolly pine. Felix cactus is Felix is its genus and Catus is its species, which is just a house cat. Groups of plants. All plants are included in this kingdom, which is then broken down into smaller divisions based on several characteristics. For example, how do they absorb and circulate fluids? In other words, are they vascular or non-vascular? How do they reproduce? Is it spores or is it seeds? The method of seed production. Is it in cones or is it in a flower? Type of seed leaf. Is it monocot or is it dicot? Fungi. Fungi is a kingdom of organisms that do not make their own food. These are very different, and this is a new concept for you. Fungi is a kingdom of organisms that do not make their own food. Plants that can't make their own food? Ah, it's because they're a different kingdom. Fungi is a different kingdom of organisms that do not make their own food. They have to grow in or on another organism, such as a plant. Examples of them are grain mold, corn smut, and wheat rust. I want you to make sure you write these three down. You have to know about them. You have to know these specific examples. Grain mold, corn smut, and wheat rust. They cause diseases in those plants that result in crop losses. So they lose their whole crop usually. The farmers and all their hard work, they lose everything because of grain mold, corn smut, and wheat rust. Obviously, wheat rust attacks wheat. Corn smut attacks corn. Grain mold attacks grain. The diseases that are caused by fungi may also affect other important crops such as rice, cotton, rye, and soybeans. And these are big crops. If a fungus infects a tree, a fruit, or a grass, it can eventually kill that tree, fruit, or grass. This is what corn smut and grain mold looks like. Corn smut is disgusting. It is black and blue and purple, and I wouldn't want to eat that piece of corn, would you? Ugh, nasty. Corn smut looks nasty. And then pre-harvest grain mold. Do you see all that mold on that grain? Ugh, I wouldn't want to have that grain in my cereal. Nasty. Shelf brackets is another fungi. Do you see how this is growing up on it's growing up on a tree trunk? Like I'd said before, fungi have to eat. They're eating off of a host. Their host is whatever they're connected to. So they are basically, they're like leeches. They're going to go eat and mooch off of whatever they connect to. You know, like that friend of yours that mooches off you all the time, always wants you to lend them some money, and they just keep on eating everything you got in your house? That's kind of like how fungi are. They're not very fun guys to have around because all they're doing is mooching off of you. So this poor tree is getting mooched off of. And all of these shelf brackets are fungi that are eating off of the nutrients that are inside that tree. See how it's making the tree look so terrible? And this is tomato fungus. Tomato fungus is eating or host, like the tomato is the host and the fungus is eating off of the host. So this can make your tomato real nasty, and I wouldn't want to eat that tomato. And then there's outside mold. This is just outside of the house. You know, mold can grow anywhere, and there's so many different types of mold. Truffles. Now, fungi does not always have to be bad. This is an example of fungi being good. Fungi, if you think about truffles, these are a delicacy. White truffles from Alba, Italy sell at De Laurenti Specialty Food in Pike Place Market for $4,000 a pound. A medium-sized truffle cost about $50. So we're talking about one about this big. That's a medium-sized truffle. That would be about $50, just one little chunk all by itself. So $4,000 a pound. So these are a delicacy. So not all fungi is bad. Now this is wheat rust. Obviously it's a fungi that's attacking wheat. And it looks like rust, therefore they called it wheat rust. There's other fungi that are good, and then there's some that are bad. Most mushroom poisonings in the world come from a non-edible mushroom called a death cap. But the problem is that they look a lot like other mushrooms that people eat, like these honey mushrooms. The cap is up to 6 inches wide, and the stalk is up to 5 inches tall. They're seen from September to November underneath pines, oaks, dogwoods, and other trees. So basically, if you don't know if it's a death cap and you don't want to be dead, you better not be eating mushrooms out of the forest. That's just as easy as you can understand it. And see all these little black things that are underneath it? Those are the spores that fall out of the plume of the mushroom cap. And if you ingesting the spore can kill you. So if you're just around it and there's some flying in the air and you breathe in too much, it can kill you. Death caps are deadly, and you're dead within minutes from what people tell me. Honey mushrooms are very good for you. They're yummy and they're delicious. But I say if you're not sure if it is poisonous, number 1, stay out of the forest looking for mushrooms. Number 2, buy your mushrooms at Food Lion or another trusted local grocery store. And that's all. Have a great day.